Welcome to Explore This, the podcast where we take a peek into the hearts and minds of explorers everywhere and learn what it takes to dedicate your life towards creating a better planet. In our first season, we focus on African explorers and feature scientists, historians, ecologists, journalists, and other experts from across the continent. I am your host, Cornelius Okello.
And I'm your co-host, Gautam Shah.
Today's guest is Frederick Mugira, a journalist who has spent years chasing the stories that flow through Africa's rivers, forests, and communities. He's based in Uganda, but his work ripples across the entire continent, connecting journalists, scientists, and the local voices to tell the real stories of water, wildlife, and climate change.
Fred is a National Geographic explorer and a Pulitzer grantee. But what's maybe more interesting is how he works. Not from far away, but from right inside the communities affected by these issues. He once said, if you try to tell the story of climate change without involving communities, you're leaving out the voices that make it real.
He's also the founder of Water Journalists Africa, a network of storytellers in 50 countries and behind projects like InfoNile, which maps and reports on life around the Nile Basin, and the Apes Reporting Project, which uses journalism to protect Africa's great apes. But beyond the headlines and the data, Fred's story is really about connection between people and places, science, water, and storytelling. Fred, thank you very much for being with us here today. It's a great pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much also for hosting me.
We like beginning from the beginning here. So take us back to growing up in Uganda. What are some of your favorite memories growing up there, and what's one particular memory that really left a lasting impression on you?
Yeah, so I grew up in Western Uganda in a place called Mbarara. It's now a city, but before then it was a municipality. That's where I grew up from. If you know Mbarara, you will realize that to the west of Mbarara, you have Congo rainforest. To the south, you have the African Great Lakes. To the north, you have River Nile. And to the east, you have Lake Victoria. So that's the place where I grew up from. But you see, you have so many lakes and rivers and stuff like that. But I remember as we grew up, we faced a lot of water shortage. We'd go to fetch water from rural wells. You line there, you fetch water at night because during the day, there's a lot of competition for it. It's a memory I have now of women and children lining up on shallow wells, waiting for water to come through springs. Like, you're waiting for it up from the rocks. You don't know if it's going to come. Yeah, that's the memory I have, and I still see it. In several other parts of the country and the continent.
Yeah, so would you say that this memory, this seeing people in need of water, almost to the point of desperation, is this the memory that sparked you on the journey or that you are on right now on your career path?
Yes, that's true. From the early age, from my primary school, I realized that we had a challenge. We had a challenge in my community. We had a challenge at home. So I knew I would grow up to find a solution for the problem that we are facing. And that's what I did. You may ask, for example, and say, why did you again, do journalism? Why didn't you do conservation? Go into conservation of water? Yeah, but when I ended up doing journalism, I wanted to make sure that the stories I write, would help the communities where I live and the neighboring communities get what they do not have. That's water. And I'm glad I've done this. You have water flowing now in my villages.
Fred, you described Mbarara in such a vivid way that I'm really jealous of how you grew up and I would like to visit. So if I came there today, where would you show me was your favorite place growing up?
Yeah, so if you came to Mbarara, I'll take you to my village. And I would like you to visit, in particular, areas where we accessed water from 10 years ago. And these now have been are no longer there. They were, wetlands. Now they've been encroached on, and people have settled in these wetlands. I'd like you to visit, for example, areas that we once treasured as sources of water, but are no longer there. Specifically, uh, you know, also take you to the neighboring river, which is called River Rees. We would walk there almost 25 kilometers from my home. Would walk there to fetch water during the mid-year dry season. July and August, we face a dry season in Western Uganda. So would walk there to fetch water. And you take the whole of the afternoon walking to fetch water, just as a small jerrycan, like 5 liters or 10 liters.
So you're walking for 25 kilometers to fetch water instead of being in school, or you're doing this after school?
Oh man, you do that during school time. So then it means then that you are missing out from you don't go to school, of course, because you have to go and fetch water. And it's not a challenge of my village only, but several villages in Uganda where you find kids, and mostly the girls, dropping out of school because they have to fetch water for domestic use at home. And they have to, walk so many kilometers. They come back, later. They cannot go back to school. They are tired. They can't compete. And then you find also that the grades in rural area schools are lower, extremely lower than in those that are in urban centers. Yeah.
What's it like now when you go back to Mbarara? Like, what type of feelings come up for you?
Well, there are so many feelings, of course. One of them is when I see that now water is piped to my father's house. I feel good. Of course, he has to pay for it now, but I feel good to see that he's able to access water from right in his compound. My father is aged 90, and he's still living and strong. And yeah, I feel good that the resources that we once never had came to our compound. But also I feel good to know that communities in my village can now save time to do other things instead of wasting it on collecting water from far areas.
At least there has been some development in that in that regard. I want to go back to the issue of school just a little bit. I see that you studied in the University of Sweden. Was this the first time you had traveled outside Uganda, or indeed outside the African continent?
Yeah, so the first time I traveled outside Uganda, I came to your country, actually. I came to Kenya. That should have been 26. So I came to attend a conference on, journalists who are being trained on, how to write stories about climate change.
So Kenya was the first place you left outside. So how was it living outside the continent, of being in Sweden as opposed to being in Uganda or having traveled to Kenya?
Yeah, so I traveled to Sweden in 2008. So by going to study my masters, I had gone to several other countries, like South Africa. I had gone to France. So it was not a new experience for me, but certainly, living outside and for some time. By then, I had not married, and I it was a good experience for me, of course. And I learned a lot. Of course, I learned a lot with the culture and stuff of living with people that may not know your language and stuff like that. You have to speak English and sometimes their language. Yeah, but it was a good experience for me, and some of the experience that I got, this has helped me, live a life that has taken me to other countries. I've gone to so many other countries, and I think that was the, like a background of knowing that there are other people, and you have to respect their culture. You can live with them. They don't need to be like you or speak your language. Yeah.
Having traveled all around, and you've mentioned quite a number of places you've been, did you ever experience a moment of culture shock, whether be it in Sweden or the first time you went to Europe? Like when you said, I think you said you've been to France. Was there a moment you felt this is very different? I've never seen this.
Could have been Kenya.
Or
Yeah.
Kenya. True.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, of course. And well, Kenya is almost like home. But there's situations where you travel. I have traveled, for example, to Chile, and it was extremely hard for me. Taking almost like 26 hours on the flight, going through Argentina. Traveling to Chile, and I had people, especially school kids, coming to me, asking me to take photos with them, because most probably some of them had never had the opportunity to interact with a black person. So they felt very happy, and some of them would fear, they are timid. They would ask someone who speaks English, and then someone would come and say, "My friends want to take a photo with you. If we find it is fine." So I was like, no problem. But also it was fine for me to live in Chile. It was kind of funny to see people rushing to take photos with you because of how you look.
Yeah, I think if you talk to many people of color who've traveled around the world, this is a very common story you hear about people being so intrigued by having never seen a person with your skin color that they're like, should I take a photo of you? Can I take a photo with you?
Yeah.
So I think all of us have really experienced this.
I see.
I'm a bit interested in some of your work, and especially on when you're just starting out as a journalist, starting out writing on climate and water issues. Was there a time at that early stage of a career where you felt maybe I'm out of my depth? Maybe this is too much for me. Maybe I'm not enough.
Yeah, that's right. And especially at the beginning of my career in environmental journalism. So you see now, environment is big stuff. For example, you have climate change, you have wildlife, you have water resources, and you have so many, like biodiversity. And I felt that I was lost in there. I needed to concentrate on one bit, on one theme, for example, if I would put it like that. So that's why I left others, to concentrate mainly on water. But also I realized that water is not just, like water. It flows, for example, in a river. So you have land on it. On the other side of the side, you have some trees there, and you have some, wildlife that depend on the water in there. So I had to narrow my, specialty to water, climate change, and wildlife, for me to be able to tell the story in a bigger way, in depth, than touching here politics, touching there, other stuff, but having to concentrate on one theme. And I've been doing this, and I strongly believe that this is what has made me be somehow known for the stuff that I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Fred, I saw somewhere that you said communities give you the emotional core of a story. Can you remember a particular person or a particular story from a community that is true for you today as it was that time, that makes this idea that communities are the core part of your story?
Yeah. Well, as a water journalist, you have to work with local communities to tell their stories, especially, local communities that are denied the right to access water. You have to go into the communities to find out the challenges they face. I'll give an example of one project that we did that focused on land grabbing in the Nile Basin. Now, there are 11 countries in the Nile Basin. So we did a collaborative project and worked as a group of 8 journalists in the Nile Basin to investigate foreign investors who come to the Nile Basin, grab land, and use it for different purposes. So we wanted to find out, what do they do with the profits? But also, when they displace communities, what happens to those that have been displaced? So we had to work with the local communities to find out the challenges that we are facing. Give an example, we worked with the communities in Ethiopia who had been displaced by foreign investors who come from the Scandinavian region in Europe. They come, they grow flowers in Ethiopia, close to Brunei. They grow flowers and ship back the flowers to Europe and take with them the profits. Yeah, so we worked with communities that had been displaced. We found that these are living in bad situations. Some had been helped, of course. They had schools, they had some health centers, but all in all, they had been displaced and they were fighting for their rights. The right access land. We saw the same situation in countries like Uganda, where foreign investors came to areas near Lake Victoria and displaced local communities to grow trees for carbon trading. And we found that communities were living in bad situations. And same stories for example, in DR Congo. I worked on a story of how indigenous communities in Democratic Republic of Congo, how they were being displaced by foreign investors, and these come from Asia. So they come, they log, they mine minerals in displaced communities and indigenous communities, the Batwa, who once protected the forests, who once protected the wildlife. And when they are displaced, they actually turn into slaves on the land that they once, owned. Because they come back and work on the land, they'll be the ones cutting down the trees, they'll be the ones mining, minerals and stuff like that, and live that kind of life. But what struck my mind, what came out, was that the Batwa that are displaced from these resources that they once protected, when they get displaced, they actually turn into the enemies of the resources they once protected because they never care now. They start, killing the wildlife. They start cutting down trees because they know they are not our trees, and so things become worse now. Yeah.
Oh, these are very incredible stories, and thank you for sharing. These are just examples of some stories that you'd find on the Water Journalist Africa website, which are really, really powerful
Perfect.
and amazing. With this website,
Mm.
do you feel like it has accomplished what it set out to do?
Yes, so it's not just a website, it's a project. It's a project that we do with almost 3,000 journalists spread across Africa. So our network brings together journalists across Africa who report about water, wildlife, and climate change. So we've been in existence since 2011. We are a media development NGO registered in Uganda. And Underwater Journalists Africa, we have different, initiatives. You'd call them projects, for example. We have InfoNile. Now that this is info like information in the Nile, like River Nile. So under InfoNile, we bring together geojournalists in the Nile basin. Under InfoNile, we have a project called Nileware. Nile, like River Nile, and where, like a shallow where. Yeah, so under Nileware, we bring together scientists and journalists to produce knowledge. And we have been training journalists, we have been training scientists to work together with journalists, and we have like a year-long fellowship. We have done this for 2 years. We bring together scientists and journalists. We pair them. They work together for a whole year, training each other, learning, how to know what happens in journalism, but also journalists learning what happens in the science world, to know how to write science stories. And we have several others. We have the other one I would like to talk about is Apes Reporting Project. So Apes Reporting Project brings together journalists in 21 countries in Africa where the apes live. Now you have different species of the apes, like you have gorillas, you have bonobos and chimpanzees, and they are spread across Africa almost along the equator. So those countries like Uganda, Democratic Republic of Congo, Tanzania, you have Rwanda. That's where we have a membership of about 700 journalists who write stories about apes.
If you don't mind me asking, why apes? Of all the wildlife, why apes?
Yeah, when we are doing before the project in 2020, we wanted to do different projects, but we thought most probably we should focus on the commonly misunderstood apes, I mean species, and we found that they were the apes were commonly misunderstood in Africa. You know what they are when they come to, for example, to some communities. People would chase them, kill them. They think it's bad luck. Others would, kill them because they want to traffic their products. But also, we found that in countries in West Africa and areas like Nigeria, we have Cameroon. We found that these apes were being, killed for witchcraft purposes. Like their products to do witchcraft. Yeah, so we thought probably we have a right. We needed to come in and sensitize, write stories about conservation of these apes, but also tell the international community the good side of the apes and why they should be conserved.
You're working on so many projects. Do you ever feel overwhelmed?
No, because I don't work alone. I work with a team of journalists. And see, we are a network of journalists. Because we are not a media house, for example, we don't get out to write stories, but we empower journalists to tell stories. And they tell these stories using voices of local communities in their communities. They write stories in different languages. For example, I'll give you an example. We run a network of 8 coordinators in the Nile Basin who coordinate our projects, and they translate these stories, for example, into local languages in their countries. And they're the ones who help us reach out to scientists, reach out to journalists who need help, tell us what we should focus on as a theme of the project for that year. Yeah, so you can see now, I don't work alone.
Oh yeah, okay. At least I was to wonder how one person was able to run all these projects. You are trying to make me feel
but
lazy.
also we run, yeah, but also we run an office. We have an office in Uganda where we are registered as an NGO, and in our office we have a team of 9 people.
So when you're not working, what do you do for fun?
I sleep. Yeah, I don't know, but I run. I regularly run. When I leave office at 5, or maybe over the weekend, I run. I run around. After sleeping, I can actually even sleep during the daytime, like at 2. If I feel I can rest for 1 hour or 2, then run around. I go to the gym. I regularly go to the gym. But of course, I have no muscles like it. Yeah. But I regularly go to the gym. Yeah. And I read some books. Of course, am currently reading some books.
Keep going to the gym and you'll get those muscles. What book would you recommend for me to read?
Well, there is a book I'm reading. It's called "What Has Nature Ever Given Us?"
Oh,
yeah, it's a very good book. You can check it out, and it quantifies everything into money. For example, the services that we get from pollinators, like the bees. If you quantify that into money, how much do you think the bees all over the world? How much would you pay them to pollinate your plants and stuff like that? It's a very good book.
I definitely will. What has nature really given us? I definitely will.
Yeah.
Fred, if you were to go back into the past before you ever became a journalist to that little boy in Mbarara, what would you say to him?
Yeah. Well, so if I met myself during the primary school, time or secondary school times, I would probably tell myself that things are not always the way they seem to be. You have to work harder. Yeah, work harder to live, to be there, support your family, read, and don't just sit.
Don't just sit. You're talking really like I will say even an East African father. Work harder. Don't just sit. Don't be lazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to wrap up,
Yes.
10, 20 years from now, when we say the name Frederick Mugira, what do you hope your name will be associated with?
The person who wrote stories, who told stories that helped our village get water. The person who helped my family get clean water. The person who helped the nation, the continent, conserve water for future generations. The person who has contributed to the conservation of River Nile to make sure that the future generation find it and depend on it and also leave it for other generations. Yeah.
Oh, that would be an amazing legacy. I hope it does come to fruition. On our podcast, we have a little tradition. So we want you to close the conversation for us by giving a toast. So raise your glass, whether it's real or imaginary, and finish this sentence for us. Here is to
Here is to the river where millions of people depend. Here is to River Nile where animals, people, birds, trees depend. And we hope that their future generations can also depend on it.
Here. Thank you very much, Frederick, for that. It has been an amazing time chatting with you and learning more about the River Nile. And for me, this is very personal because I do work in water. As I told you, I'm a freshwater resource manager, so this is close to home. And I really do hope that your legacy comes to pass. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, too.
That's it for this episode of Explore This. Thanks for listening. Until next time, keep exploring.